You are about to listen to the full interview with Ron Morehead. Sections of it were originally included in our Sierra Sounds episode. Ron Morehead captured audio recordings of purported Sasquatch vocalizations in the Sierras in the early 70s. We spoke with him about his incredible experiences and what he has learned through decades of research. We hope you enjoy.
Actually, a retired businessman. I started this Bigfoot thing in 1971 when I was invited into a camp in the High Sierras. And I'll get into that in a minute, but really, none of us were looking for Bigfoot or anything about it. We were just as a hunting camp. And so my background's in business, and I had several restaurants and a hotel in Yosemite. And that's what I did. And the other guys that were involved in this camp at Sierra Camp were also businessmen, most of them. And most of us didn't talk about what went on up there at the time, only to our friends and relatives, because it was kind of weird, to be honest with you. Some of it was. And so I'll get into that here in a little bit, but I enjoyed being with you. Thanks for asking me to be here.
Of course. You mentioned you're a business owner. What you said you managed restaurants in Yosemite?
Yeah, I owned them.
When did you first learn about this camp and some of the associated sightings with it?
It was early 1971 when the Johnson brothers went into the camp, and that evening they experienced some really raucous noises, and they thought at first it was a bear, but then they realized bears don't make sounds like that. So the avid hunters had been visiting this camp since 1958, actually been going there hunting, and they went outside after all the commotion stopped, and they seen this big, huge five-toed footprint in the mud, and they came out and told the other guys, which I wasn't part of the group at that time, and they all wanted to know what was going on. So they went back up with recorders, and just in case whatever happened again, and sure enough it did. One of the guys got so freaked out about it because pretty aggressive sounding noises, some of them, and he left a note early the next morning as soon as the sun hit up, and he headed out. He didn't want to go back. So he came out and told the wives that, yeah, what the Johnson brothers said is true. There's some kind of monster up there and something's going on. And so they were all worried because the guys didn't come out the day they were supposed to. And they wanted him to go back and check on them because they didn't know at the time. Nobody knew at the time. I was friends to them all, but I wasn't a hunter at the time. And anyway, nobody knew what they were dealing with at the time. If it was aggressive, they would eat you or what they was going to do. So he would go back, but he wanted me to go with him, and I was a friend, and they knew they could trust me. So I took the hike into camp. It's about an 8-mile trek, pretty aggressive trek at that, and in the Sierra Nevada mountains, and right deep into the wilderness, and it's about 8,400 feet to camp elevation. So it was pretty difficult to get to, but we got there. The guys were okay. They all came out. They had stayed an extra day because of the stuff going on, because these things did come back, whatever they are. They have big feet. They got a big voice, so we call them Bigfoot. I don't know what they are. They might be just pure aliens, as far as we know, but something gave them the vocal mechanism for language, and only humans are supposed to have that, according to Dr. Lieberman at Brown University. But these things have the mechanism for language, and that's what we determined in some of the studies. It wasn't until 1972 when winter of 71, 72, when Warren Johnson, the leader of the group, he contacted Ivan Sanderson, and Ivan Sanderson read the letter that Warren wrote him, 23-page handwritten letter. Thought it was probably a hoax, somebody pulled his leg, but he thought he'd send it out to Peter Byrne, who was in the Dalles, Oregon at the time, and studied Bigfoot there. And so Peter read it. He thought the same thing, but he thought he'd send it down to Al Berry, who was in California where we lived. And Al Berry got it and thought he'd come down and interview us, and he did, and got kind of caught up in wondering who's pulling these guys' leg. He was an investigative reporter at the time, working in Redding, and we invited him in for the 72 season, and went in as soon as the snow let us and started going in. He started experiencing the same thing, these things coming around. He was still looking for who could be hoaxing this thing, and nobody has repeated visits like this. Most of the thing he gets a sighting behind a car or something like that. So anyway, he ended up getting caught up in it and still looking for the hoax all the time, but he never could find anybody pulling anybody's leg. The only thing they left was the Bigfoot impressions and glimpses occasionally. He never got to see anything. He wasn't there as often as we were, but why he didn't, I don't know, because his microphone remoted up about 40 feet behind the shelter, captured some really clear sounds one night, and you'd think that he could have seen something because he had his head stuck up through the shelter roof, their little hole they made. But he never saw it, never saw what was making the sound. It sounded like things holding the mic sometimes, it's so close. But he had to figure it was behind some big rocks up there or behind a big tree. There were huge trees up there.
Before you went out to the camp, did you have any conception of Bigfoot? Like, was Bigfoot something you knew about, or the group knew about, or was this kind of your first introduction to the concept of Sasquatch?
Well, I wouldn't say my first. We weren't looking for Bigfoot. I didn't think about Bigfoot. Nobody up there had been. The only thing we knew was the Patterson film that came out in '67. But anyway, it's been pretty much established that film is credible, and we, again, weren't looking for Bigfoot, though. Now, when I went up with this guy, I didn't know what it was. Nobody did. When I went up with Donald on the trip in to check the guys and see if they were okay, I seen the big track, and I said, well, that's a Bigfoot, whatever made that. So, therefore, it's kind of considered a Bigfoot. I don't believe that they are all of the same type. I just don't. All the ones we dealt with were up there in the Sierras, but not all of them all over the world, and they're reported everywhere, are the same genome, I don't think. They may be a subspecies off of it. Some of them may be a relic hominid that has evolved. I think some of them have probably crossbred with indigenous people and lost some of their original attributes, trying to gain some maybe, but we're not head of the food chain as far as I'm concerned here. We just have dominion, but we don't have. Yeah, there's more things going on than meets our three-dimensional eyes.
The footprints you found out there were actually kind of unique in the sense that the toes were splayed, which is a little bit of a different characteristic than some of the other traditional casts that you might see. Was that a consistent trait?
Also that trait. All the creatures had the same type splayed footprint that people see now that I've posted. And this is the same prints we've been seeing for years up there, and since I've been going up there for just 50 years now, I've been studying this phenomenon. And so, no, they all did. That's what kind of leads me, because I asked Dr. Meldrum, Jeff Meldrum, who's a footprint expert, and he wanted to see them, but I see no upside to that because he based everything on the Patterson track, which I don't think is compared at all. He shows a mid-tarsal break in those, and ours didn't seem to have that. But again, we didn't have the same turf up there, the decomposed granite, and pine needles all over the place. So I just didn't let him look at them, didn't give them to him. He could see the pictures of them, but I'm afraid he would use the classical science to try to judge them, and thinking that they have to compare the Patterson tracks or they're not real. And we knew they were real. Whatever was up there was real. And nobody's pulling anybody's leg. And how could anybody be up there year after year after year showing the same type of footprints? And they're different sizes because we had different sized creatures. We had a little 9-inch track one time in the snow with an 18-inch track. And when that told us there was a little one, they do procreate. And we also have recorded the voices of the little one. So I'm quite sure that there's a family of them there. There were. And that's what we're dealing with, is a family of them. And,
so these sounds that you recorded kind of became dubbed as the Sierra sounds. That's how they're popularly known. Can you give me a little more detail about how you actually ended up recording? Like, what was the actual, were you using a tape recorder? Were you inside a cabin? How were those actually recorded?
Well, the way we recorded those, we have a shelter up there, which we go into. It's kind of a makeshift shelter of logs, and I guess some cables that we wrapped around a tree and put some deadfall across the top of it and put plastic over that. So we were huddled up inside this little group of trees. We call it the shelter. And we would stick our microphones outside the shelter, generally through the walls, through the deadfall logs, and normally. And Wait for them to come around. We had cassette recorders. That's all you had. I had a top-notch, one of the best you could buy at the time, and I hauled it up on mules and take care of it, and had stereo microphones outside each side of the walls of the shelter. Headset on. I had rigged up a mercury switch. So I could just turn it over. It wouldn't make a sound. You wouldn't even know it was recording. And that's incredible sounds, but they all unfortunately got lost in a house fire I had sometime after that. So anyway, that's how we all recorded pretty much. Al Berry remoted his microphone up that area, like I said, about 40 feet from the shelter that one time. And we were all inside the shelter when these things would be making their noises. So people say, well, if you can't see what made the noise, you don't know what made the noise. And that's so true. You don't. It wasn't until 1974 when they started interacting with us when I was outside the shelter. Me and another guy came in with the supplies on the horses and mules, and that was the night I saw one, and I saw what was making the sound, and it was not sound but sounds plural. They were just all over us that night. We thought they was going to come in and let us ride on their shoulders. I don't know, but that's the night I recorded the samurai cry, they call it. And that's the night I saw one making his sounds running down through the forest right away. Really fast, very rapid, very smooth. And there was another one, we think a young one and a mother down below he was going to. And that's the thought we had because we heard the sounds, two down there making their sounds. That's where the little voice comes in. And you got the big one behind us, behind me up here, making his cries and sounds. And they were asking me something that night. I feel very sure about that. I just don't know what it was. We'd become what we thought was kind of friendly. They weren't trying to eat us. We liked that part. They weren't tearing up our camp or messing with us in that regard. So we thought, we had a relationship going on with them, I suppose. And so we started trying to work with that. And it was a little bit concerning at first because the first sounds were very aggressive, the sounds we recorded in 71. That's why I started going back up there as much as I could in 71 and taking my little recorder with me. And then I bought a really good recorder that winter in 72. When Al Berry went up, I had a really good tape recorder. And he was recording too. And those are the sounds that he recorded, we recorded that night. And he had the University of Wyoming, he got a professor of electrical engineer there to study them. And that was for a year-long study. And he wrote a paper on that and put it out in a book called Anthropology of the Unknown and Man-Like Monsters on Trial. That was presented at a symposium in British Columbia in 1978, I think. And they produced it in a book, and put his paper in that book in 1980. So that was the first really good stuff because he had determined that the sounds were not pre-recorded or re-recorded. They were not speed up or slowed down. They were just, they were original. Al Berry knew, he was professional. He had masters in English, masters in English too, but in science. And he knew what it took to really get this on the table for people to look at. He knew it was pretty special. We didn't realize how special it was, and we underestimated what we were dealing with up there. We were thinking of them just as a wild ape in the woods that hadn't been documented yet. And a lot of people still think that. And that's okay if they want to think that, but I got to tell you, they're probably wrong. So these things are more than that, a lot more. And they started doing some things up there that we could not put a finger on. You could not figure out how they did it and what was going on, lights and sounds and things that just had no classical answer, in classical science anyway. Al Berry, having a master's degree in science, said, don't tell people about this stuff. He says, or they won't ask you to speak anywhere or talk anywhere. And so we didn't talk about that for quite a while. But I do now because I think I found the science that might help people understand more about what these things could be. That's quantum science. And it's a definite science, there's no doubt about it, but classical science don't look into that. Classical science is based on classical science is based on everything being physical, predictable, measurable, and quantum science is not predictable. It's outside of our three-dimensional reality, really, but it's a proven science through mathematics. Einstein, Bohr, Tesla, those guys all studied it about a little over 100 years ago. It's that new. But you can't get these classical scientists who've been trained in a discipline to get outside the box that they've been trained in, and they just have to go by these rules and have to have this much proof, this much. I asked them one time, I'm in a kind of forum with a bunch of them. I said, tell somebody here, if everything's measurable like classical science says it has to be, how far is it to the end of the universe? Well, who can answer that one? Nobody can. But you got to get outside of that. And Dr. Edgar Mitchell, astronaut, he said it takes classical and quantum sciences together to have clear perception. And I like that because it does. You have to realize that there's more going on outside of our three-dimensional reality than we know. And you have to look into what that could be. We only see within certain frequencies. And according to Tesla, everything is energy, frequency, and vibration. So that come into quantum science, which led me to my second book, which is the Quantum Bigfoot. And I kind of explained how I think a lot of this stuff really works. And actually, quantum science is how the whole universe works. Every law falls into that. And I thought there had to be a law behind everything, and classical science was not answering some of the phenomena we was experiencing up there at that camp. That's a long answer to a short question.
No, it's an interesting idea. I mean, I'm reading this book right now. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's called Where the Footprints End. And it explores a lot of the supernatural phenomenon associated with seeing these creatures and how a lot of these accounts don't really get reported because it doesn't fit into maybe the traditional idea of what these creatures are, which is flesh and blood. But many, many encounters with these creatures also come along with really anomalous behavior, lights, odd noises, things that would almost be associated with what you would consider like a poltergeist or a spirit. You talked about in 1974 you actually saw one of these creatures. Can you talk about that encounter and what that experience was like and what you saw?
Yeah, I saw one in 1974 when we just got into camp. And I write about this in my first book, Voices in the Wilderness, but we had started up the trail and some pretty good trekking the trail with our horses and mules, packed supplies in. And I saw something spooked our animals on the way in. And we thought that could be a bear, it could be a deer jumping around, it could be anything. But we kept going, and about an hour or so up the trail, I saw a big 5-toed footprint perpendicular to the trail. I thought, oh, okay, that fits, because where the track came from was right down the ravine where we had previously had that experience with something. And so when we got to camp, I'm firm, 100% sure they already was there. And we found that out and established it within our own minds the next morning when we started looking around, because we got in there late in the evening and started unpacking, and that's when I started having this encounter, and that's when I saw one that night. And I started recording. I got my little recorder out of the saddlebag, and I didn't haul my big one in at the time, and with the cassette recorder and started recording my interaction with them. And I got the wood knocks. We say it's wood knock. I've never seen one knock on a tree, but you hear these knocks, and they're rhythmic. What we were recording was rhythmic, and you also hear them clocking rocks together the same way, and then you hear whooping. Different types of whoops will go around, and I think that's how they interact with each other before they start yapping their chatter. And they do chatter very rapidly when they get into chattering, and to each other. And they were also chattering to me that night. And that's when I thought, these things are really trying to get to know us or tell us something. Well, maybe they already know us. Maybe they try and tell us, understand us a little bit. They're very unique. They're very big, but I think there's a lot more going on to them than what we understand to this day. So I work on that, and I've been studying that for a long time. I got into quantum physics well over 10 years ago. I'm not a physicist, but I think anybody can pick up a quantum physics 101 and get a hold of some of this stuff and understand where it's coming from. That night I saw one, like I said, made this big samurai cry behind me and started shooting across. It was so fast, I can't tell you any details of it. It was very big, very smooth. How it ran through the woods like that, I don't know, but it did, down to where the other two were. And that's the night I saw one, and that's the night that I know when we could say we saw, I could say I saw what made the sound. Before that, we knew what was making the sounds, but again, you didn't see what was making the sound. But when you can see what makes the sounds, it makes it 100% positive in your head. Even though I was positive prior to that, no body up there, no man anyway, was really interfering with us. It just wasn't that way. And then
When did you see any details of? Did you see its face or anything details like that, or was it
no.
Was it running too fast?
No, it was too fast. No, it didn't stop. It just like a train going by you.
I know a lot of sightings of Bigfoot also come along with this idea of a foul smell. Did you ever experience anything like that around the camp?
No. Well, we did one time, and that was in 1976. It was when we had shot a bear in camp. It was tearing up our camp. What woke us up wasn't the bear, but it was some yelling, Bigfoot yelling up behind us, sounds of the creature. And then also we heard our barrels being rummaged out there and food supplies being torn apart and everything. And we looked out and it was a bear. But, make long story short, we ended up having to shoot the bear to keep him. He liked our food. He wanted our food. And we wanted our food ourselves. So in retrospect, I kind of wish we didn't have to shoot him, but we didn't have much of a choice that night. He was coming down. I was shot just a few feet away from us. Just my friend and I, Bill. And next day it gets a little bit gory, so I'm not sure how people.
It's okay. No, it's fine. You can get into it.
Well, we skinned him out and ate him. Okay, ate his hindquarters and deep pit barbecue. Really pretty tasty, actually. Because mountain bears eat berries; they don't eat garbage, so it wasn't bad at all. And it really was kind of freaky when you skin them out and look at them. It looks like a person. You know? It's not. It's a little bit freaky. And anyway, that's what happened. And I don't know if that's why they stopped coming in real close, but they never came in close right next to us like they used to after that. You hear the sounds from a distance, and you know that they're toying with you because you see their tracks occasionally, but they didn't come in real close. And maybe we just failed the test, and the test was, I think, probably we're being tested on this planet as we live, and how we respond to every situation is more important than the situation itself. And if you respond with killing something, that's probably not the best thing to do. And there's a lot of killing going on in this Earth and planet. And I don't know, get off the subject pretty easy, Ray, so just...
Yeah, no worries. So during your time, you had gone out there for many years. How many different people came out to the location, and how many different people actually heard these calls and these vocal patterns?
Oh, I would say just the group I was involved in. I did take the cryptolinguist up there who studied these things in 2008 and said they have language. That was very important. And really, there were 6 of us all together. A couple guys have died in between, and one guy is too old to go up there. And I didn't take people in there. A lot of people want to go in there, but I don't do that because the Johnsons' heirs, their sons and grandpeople now, are still try to hunt that area when they can, and they don't want it any day because it's a pretty rare hunting area. We never didn't get a deer when we was hunting. So I started hunting after that when I got involved with these guys, and I don't hunt anymore because I kind of think that unless you're going to eat what you kill, you shouldn't be killing. So really, I took David Paulides up there, the Missing 401 that hunted, to do filming in 2018. And a cryptolinguist and him, and I took Joe Hauser up there, who was a wildlife biologist at the time, and he did a flora fauna study on the camp at the request of a scientist. But other than that, no, there's not many people know where it is, and you can tell you where it's at, and you probably couldn't find it. It's really back there in the woods, but it's a real pristine, beautiful area. But
when was the last time you visited the camp?
With David Paulides in 2018. There was a lot of fires in California going at the time. It was real smoky where we were. Nothing took place when he was there with his videographer. But that's not unusual. We take people in there that's got cameras and guns. And I say people, I believe that's true wherever you go. if you're out there to hunt them or to shoot something, if you don't understand it, you're probably not going to see one of these things. Again, there's not a lot of people know where it's at, and I have not taken a lot of people up there, so I'd keep it under 8 or 10 at the most.
Do you believe that they're still out there? That the same group might still be out there?
Yeah, I flew over in a small plane just to see what kind of damage might be done by the fires, because that whole area, after we got out of there, supposedly was on fire. But a lot of the area right around where our camp is, several acres there, it looks like trees were still there. So somehow it missed it, looks like. Or underburned it. That's what I've been told. Fires do that sometimes. That's the last time I think anybody's been up there, was in 2018.
Is there, when you experienced these encounters and heard these sounds, was there any commonalities about what was going on, the time of day, what the season was, what the group was doing, anything like that?
Usually in the evening, just at dusk or just after dusk, we'd go inside the shelter and close up the door, which is just a log between two trees, and they would start making their sounds. And that's how it generally was the first couple of years. Like I say, it wasn't until 74 when they started interacting with us when we were outside. I say interacting when their sounds outside when we were outside the shelter. And the commonalities, season-wise, you could just about bank on them being there during deer season, because I don't know why, because all the guys were there and we was hanging deer, and it was just they would move our deer, but they never took our deer. We found some big tracks on the where we hung the deer one time, and more than once really. And we'd also find them when we go out hunting on foot, when there were horses and mules tied up, and you come back and find some tracks around them, Bigfoot tracks. So you got to wonder what they were doing with their animals, just curious or whatever. But wherever the deer were, we'd talk about it, Bill and I, because we were the packers, and we'd take the horses and mules and go bring the deer in on the mules. You
mentioned you went back in 2018, but you didn't experience anything. When was the last encounter you had at the camp?
I could tell you about a strange encounter we had up there in 2016.
Sure. Yeah, please.
2011 is when I actually heard the chatter the last time. And I write about that in my book, Voices of the Wilderness. It was 2016, this light anomaly. I explained to people it's like a rod of light, about 3 or 4 foot long, and just come floating by the tent we had set up. I stopped sleeping in the shelter. Our shelter isn't there now because we took it down. But this light comes floating by us. I mean, floating, manipulating through the trees. And gosh, how do you explain that? I mean, what do you do with that? You don't know. You just don't know what's going on. We just know nothing really surprises me anymore with this. Now that you get into the quantum aspect of things, a lot of things can happen. A lot of things has happened over the eons of time with New Year people reporting all kinds of strange things, dog man and different crazy things. Well, I've experienced crazy things, and I don't know how to put it. And quantum science actually helps you answer something. It's like trackways just stopping. When the trackways end, you mentioned that a minute ago. Well, I used to think, just like so many research you do, well, if the trackways end, that means it's a hoax. Somebody put them there and they just started making the tracks. Well, no, it doesn't have to be that way, because everything is energy, vibration, and frequency. We are energy at the most minute level, according to science. And that energy cannot die, it can only change forms. And if these things have the ability to change their vibrational frequency into something that does not matter, like we're matter, like a form, they could disappear on you. And I mean, I think that's probably what's happening with these people that say they saw them disappear. I've heard these people, several of them over the years, say, I saw one disappear. And we're talking about credible people. I'm not talking about the woo-woo guy over here in the corner. There's some credible people I've talked to who said, no, that thing just dissipated right there in front of my eyes. And I start, questioning that. Then I wonder how many of these people could they really be lying, or all of them confused, or they being hypnotized thinking they saw it disappear, or did it really disappear? Well, there is a science behind how that can happen. It's called vibration and frequency. And if you can get in the right vibration, you can change matter. And that's how I think these masters of old did their miracles. It was through the laws of quantum physics. And we've been told we can do that, but we haven't evolved that far enough to understand just how all that works. We can read about it and understand it a little bit, but doing it's another story. If I can learn how to change water into wine, I could save a lot of money. But I just haven't learned to do that or walk on water yet. But it's something that can happen if you just learn how. And I think it's the laws of quantum physics. A lot of it's being experienced now. I mean, telepathy. See, Darwinism does not explain how our consciousness works. It doesn't get in. It just gets into the physical evolution of things. And I don't disbelieve in evolution, but what I do believe is that the troglodytes were here, no doubt about it. And there's history, there's artifacts, there's all kinds of things establishing that the troglodytes have been here for millions of years. Well, something happened to the DNA structure of the troglodyte when they evolved so far. And I think that's where we got our consciousness, that's where we got our attributes that we have, telepathy. We have those attributes if we just learn how to access them. And we can do that. And there's a way to do that too. So anyway, I think that's happened. I do believe in UFOs and aliens. And I think anybody has got their head in the sand if they think we're the only intelligent life going out there. And I question our intelligent life. I look into what some of these things have done. So I've been in Peru, I've been in Bolivia, I've been in Nepal, Russia, Siberia. I've been all over looking at the enigmas going on. And you see these things, especially in South America, these big megalithic structures that have been put together, 100-ton boulders and bigger. We can't do what they did. And this is ancient times, a long time ago. The pre-Inca people, Incas didn't do that. They didn't have the tools to do that. They put together like a jigsaw puzzle, put up on top of a 13,000-foot mountain. You go there and see that stuff with your own eyes, and you realize you can't just put it up on a shelf. You got to try to figure out there had to be something here smarter than us to do that, or they had a technology that we don't have, and we can't do it today anyway. And anyway, you start understanding that now the government's, acknowledges UFOs and somebody's flying those things. So aliens are here. I think they've been coming here for eons. Our planet is special. I think we're special, but our planet especially is special. Yeah, it's a little special right there, It's got everything any species would want. It's got water. It's got everything. And other planets in the solar system don't have that. Now, there's life outside of the solar system, sure, in the universe. But I still think they come here, and they have been coming here for eons, and they have manipulated the species on this planet, experimenting. And there's a lot of programs out there now saying the same thing. I've been saying this for a while now, but I think it makes me feel good because other people, scientists, are coming up with some of this. Yeah, there's DNA manipulation going on. Well, whatever we was dealing with in the Sierras up there I had an alien component to it, I believe, because
you believe there's a connection between UFO sightings, aliens, and potentially these creatures as well. You think there's some connection between all of them?
Not all of them. I don't know about all of them. No, some of them may just be a relic hominid that's evolved up, and maybe they just scream and yell and beat on something every once in a while, but they don't talk. You hear that? I've heard a lot of people tell me, I've heard samurai chatter, I've heard exactly what you recorded where I was out over here in Canada or someplace. But most of the things you hear is a yell or a scream. And so I don't think they're all the same. And that's kind of different. Most Bigfooters only believe, the Patterson film's real, and so that everything has to be hooked into that, Well, no, it doesn't. Not if you believe that different types of aliens have been here, and I believe that. And
you brought up an interesting point about how most of the other recordings are screams or something that definitely sounds like more animalistic as compared to your recordings, which definitely sound like there's some sort of language involved. Have you ever heard any other recordings captured of these creatures that you think sound like the same sort of creatures that you captured?
I've heard some chatter, but not as much as what you would hope for, because most people don't have the quality of recordings that we were picking up. I mean, they're really good to study, and we're lucky. You heard the first report of them chattering when the Albert Ostman account of 1924, when John Green interviewed him, years later. And I've been up in Toby Inlet and researching that myself, actually, in my own airplane. And that's the first reported incident of they chattered amongst themselves, according to what John Green wrote in the book Apes Among Us. And but the chattering is kind of unique. It's not a lot of them do that, or they just don't do it to not expose themselves. Because they start chattering, it's going to expose them. If they just scream or yell, they have a voice mechanism, which is, at least the ones we dealt with, which is much superior to ours. And that's kind of important. They can make sounds that are inside and outside the human range, the average human range. And it represents the ones that Dr. Curlin studied at the University of Wyoming, said they represent an animal about 8 foot tall. And that's what we were experiencing up there, because two of the guys seen one very clear one night, I say in moonlight, and it was just a few feet away from the shelter when it walked by, and they was looking through the crack and seen it. And they said it's between 8 and 10 foot tall, and it left a 19-inch footprint. They seen the next morning. So, yeah, they some chatter, some just scream and yell, but I don't know if they can all talk or not. I think some of these screams or yells are probably trying to call to a young one or tell another one that you're close by or something like that, and they don't want to expose themselves with the language.
And yeah, the reason we feel pretty confident that this is language is because you had a cryptolinguist, Scott Nelson, review the tapes.
That's correct.
Could you talk a little bit about what his findings were, and then also, in case anybody isn't aware of what a cryptolinguist is, what that is?
Scott Nelson accidentally ran across these when he was looking for a project, or his son was looking for a project to work on in school, and he got tied up. He heard the samples of the sounds that was on the BFRO.net, Matt Moneymaker's website, and he called me up, and of course he, like so many others, I thought, dude, just a quirk trying to get into the camp or something. Didn't know who he was, really. He said, I want you to know I'm serious. He said, I'm a cryptolinguist. He was retired from the Navy at the time. As a cryptolinguist, he spent a career studying unknown sounds. If they represent a language, if there's any mischief in the language, as far as something bad or some trying to fool somebody else or whatever. So he spent his life studying languages. He's a 2-time graduate of the cryptolinguistic school in Monterey. Got that here somewhere, but not that anybody cares. But he very credible person. I didn't know a guy like this existed. He made a trip all the way out from Missouri, where he was teaching school at the time, teaching foreign languages. And he interviewed me and Al, and we gave him the context of the sounds, and he took the sounds back and studied them, and he came back with a statement. He said, these things have language. And so, wow, we knew they were communicating with each other. No, language, that means something very special. That means a morphine stream of words which make a cognizant, sapient sentence. And they have that. And according to Dr. Lieberman, 1968 at Brown University, said only humans have the vocal mechanism, which means the hyoid bone with the nerves connected to the tongue, which can process what you see to your thoughts, the language. Now, all dolphins communicate. Everything communicates through pheromones or through some method. But they don't communicate with language like we do. And that made a whole world of difference, because Scott Nelson, by the way, is the guy that I've taken up there a few times now. He's been trying to capture some sounds, and the batteries will go dead or something like that will happen. It's kind of discouraging, because you might hear something, by the time you get your recorder on, it's all over with. It's like well, who knows, but I think if they are interdimensional, and if they have that attribute, at least the ones up where we go, time doesn't exist as we perceive it. And according to quantum physics, everything's in the now. We only have to go through as humans in this three-dimensional reality, through a linear time, and we have to experience tomorrow, and, well, assuming you live, and we know we experienced yesterday, but there's a lifespan that we go through day after day after day, year after year, and then we pass on to something else, change forms, according to physics. And according to religions, you go to heaven, and or physics, you just change to another dimension. But you don't die. Your entity, whatever you are inside, doesn't die. Your consciousness doesn't die. And So Scott, I've become friends with him. We talk out at different conferences occasionally, and he's a fun guy, good guy, and he would encourage anybody to ever capture some sounds, quality sounds. Most people send it through me first. I kind of screen them because I know what he looks for. He looks for the Morphe stream of words, and that's 10 or 12 words that make up a sentence, like I said before. So if you don't have that, don't send him a yell or a scream or something like that. That doesn't mean a thing. He's a language expert, and I mean he's an expert. Not a whole lot of people have the ability that he has, and the education that he has, and the hundreds, if not thousands of hours under what they call the cans, which is your headset, listening to languages and sounds. And we also had a human sound expert in the middle of all that to listen to them, and she was only one of 10 in the state of California qualified to be a court interpreter in several languages. And she said, who or whatever made these sounds are, it's way above what humans can do. She said, I challenge anybody to try to duplicate this. If you get some guy like Joe Rogan come out saying he can do it, well, come on, Joe. He's a smart guy. He shouldn't be making sounds like that if he can't. He hadn't done his homework, you know. I had people chime on me the other day saying, hey, Joe Rogan said, I don't even listen to the guy because he's rude, he's crude, and he don't do his homework. You know, he just don't do his homework. And if he'd done his homework, he wouldn't have said what he said, because for him to say that, it makes him look bad, because he's saying Dr. Curlin's a fake, that Dr. Curlin's report don't mean a thing, and he's a professor of electrical engineering, so the tapes have not been manipulated. They are not. They hadn't been. We knew something was going up there, but now it's substantiated by him, by cryptolinguists, and you got all these people, too, besides Nancy Logan. She was the human sound expert out of California. But she has what they call perfect hearing, and that nobody can duplicate those sounds. So I kind of
say nobody. When you say nobody can duplicate, does she mean like the vocal ability, like vocal cords in humans cannot reach this certain, like what does that specifically mean?
That means just for this, what it means is they can't duplicate because they can't reach the frequencies. Now you got guys like Thinker Thunker. He's not a professional, so just what he says, but he did a 20-minute analysis on this, which you can find on Sierra Sounds on his site, and he said that he's discovered that there's 5 octaves in one tone in some of these sounds, and humans can't do that. The most we can do is 3 octaves in one tone, and according to him. And I have yet to find a qualified person at the university who went to give a full study on that to talk about that aspect of it. If that's true, well, I have no reason to believe it isn't true, but then I can't really talk about that much because he's not a sound expert. He does do his work, though. He did more work than Joe Rogan did, I tell you that. Because when you get them talking to each other, chattering amongst themselves, and we got that recorded, then you have a human stepping in the middle of it, saying something. You can't do that. I mean, there's no sound of pre-recording or re-recording at altered speed, and that's been determined scientifically. And, you know, if there was a 60-cycle hum in there, that would have ring a bell right away, because that means it would have been pre-recorded. That's what happens when you pre-record something. You get a 60-cycle hum in it. There was nothing like that in ours, and that should tell somebody something. To just study what we've gone through, and what basically Al Berry went through. He fostered all this because he knew how important it was. We didn't realize how important it was until later on in years. We underestimated what we're dealing with, or we'd have done things a little bit differently, probably.
So yeah, when Al Berry started looking into this, I mean, he was pretty skeptical of what he was gonna find. But by the end, it sounds like he's pretty convinced that these creatures are out there, and he's experienced it himself. Could you maybe just talk us through a little bit of his journey from coming to you all looking for a way that this could be hoaxed to becoming really a believer?
Yeah, like I said, it was 1972. When he went into camp, he and I went in, and he went with Warren Johnson also. But he first went to after he recorded these things, and he was still looking for the hoax. He was kind of hoping it would be a hoax. He told me one time, because it'd be easier to answer if he could find some kind of evidence that somebody did that. But first he went into Photonics research in New York City, who studied the Nixon tapes of kind of top of line on studying tapes. They went to he went to them and asked them if they could look into it. Well, they looked and said the sounds were spontaneous, and they were taken at the time of recordings. There was no 60-cycle hum, which would have shown pre-recording in the studio. They were too powerful to have been human-made, and that was I.E. Tybal, a president of Symphonic Research. And this is all in Alberry's book that he wrote in, I think, 1978. And it's interesting to him to want to see the track that he, the track method, I should say, that he used. He went to him first, but they suggested he find a university to study him because they weren't going to do it for free. And he found Dr. Curlin, University of Wyoming, who would take an unbiased look at it, because you got to have he said, I want to either credit it or discredit it. I don't care. Just tell me the truth, whatever it is, how the study comes out. That's when Curlin did his study, and I got that sound in my presentation. Yeah, it was outside the human range. It shows the sound. He shows a box in his report in that book, like Monsters on Trial, and it shows where the animal that he was checking into at that time with the sounds was represented an animal 8.5 foot tall, and without knowing that, 8 foot 4 inches, he said, but without knowing that, Dr. Benson, professor of electrical scientific diagnostic scientists at Texas A&M. We tried to get him to study him just to get some corroborative stuff for Dr. Curlin years ago. And he didn't know Dr. Curlin did it, I don't think, but he said that whatever he was listening to represented an animal 8.5 foot tall. They judged that by the human vocal tract, what it does and how big that man was that did it. And they take that average, I guess, and know what an average is. So compared to the human vocal tract, they're over 8 foot tall, some of them. And so that was Dr. Benson, Texas A&M, that said that. But he was just too busy. He wouldn't take him on for a study. He said, he wouldn't do it. Of course, I think a lot of these guys, too, that are in this, they don't want their reputation soiled.
Yeah.
And that's just the way it goes.
I think it's tough. I mean, you talk about Bigfoot, and I think it gets harder to get funding for your research going forward, and which is unfortunate because, I mean, there's thousands of people telling these stories. There's, regardless of you think it's a flesh and blood creature or not, there's something to it, and it's worth looking into. Other than the recordings you've made, what do you think is some of the best evidence for these creatures' existence out there?
I think our recordings are probably one of the best, if not the best. The evidence that people want to rely on, and I think it's the second best, if not the best, is the Patterson Gimlet film. I've been researching this thing now for so many years, and I've heard professionals chime in on that it's real. And it's only been studied second to the Kennedy assassination, and there's no zipper in the back of that thing, and there was no way we could have recreated that in 1967, according to the specialists who worked for Disney down there, Walt Disney Studios. And Bill Munns gave a special report on that. I've known him, talked with him for a few years, off and on, and he says no, it's definitely real. And you get those kind of guys chiming in on it, and you tend to go with that. Of course, I know Bob too. Of course, Roger Patterson died several years ago, but Bob's still with us. He's in his 80s, but he's still cognizant and floating around over Yakima somewhere. And he's a needle guy, but I don't think he'd be lying. You just got to either believe him. Of course, maybe he if there was something malicious behind it, he may not have even known about that part, because Roger Patterson was the one who's really trying to understand it, trying to get something on film. Well, he had the camera there when they went into Bluff Creek that time. I think the pace of the 4 hooves of pace coming through the creek probably muffled the sound them sneaking up on that one. That's how they got the picture.
If there's anyone listening who's interested in having an experience with these creatures, what sort of advice would you give them if they were going to go out and look?
Well, first of all, you won't find them, they'll find you, and it depends on your attitude and your vibration. If you've got a good vibrational frequency going on, that means don't try to analyze things, just be simple. Just know that there's nobody else human playing with you. Yeah, it's their time and their place. Just try to find a place where they've been seen quite a bit, and go there and set up camp, and don't change things around. Just be still, and don't jump up and down when they start hearing something like a big crack or a big whoop knock or something like that. Just be still. We found that's why I think we got to see them that night in '74, is because we knew from our experiences in the years past with these things that you just be still and just keep on doing what you're doing. They don't think they got your attention, and you're not going to jump up and down and shine a flashlight out in the woods. That's one of the worst things you can do. If I don't think they got your attention, they'll keep getting closer and doing more, and that's what was happening with us that night. We didn't shine a light, and we didn't jump up and down. We just sit there, kept fixing my meal on the stove, and so there's a lot. I have a whole list of things to do and not to do. It's pretty much what you shouldn't do. It's more important than what you do. Some people have the wrong intentions, I think, and they just you can't be the aggressor. They have to make the first move. Try not to be fearful, because they can sense fear, and if you got guns and you're fearful, you're probably going to shoot at something you don't understand. And people don't understand these things. They're big, much bigger than we are. They're very, very elusive, though. And if you get close to them, you don't shoot at them, and don't. I also suggest don't take in dogs, because it'll screw the dog up if they start barking at them. They'll kill them. I got that recorded too. A guy interviewed a 911 call when he had his dog killed. Yeah, and don't try to trick them, because they'll see right through that. We tried to trick them. So many people ask, why did you get a picture? Well, yeah, that many experiences up there. How come you didn't get a picture? Well, it's not like you're trying to trick a bear or a mountain lion or something like that. They got a consciousness about them, an intuitiveness about us that we didn't understand then. I do now, but you don't. I think I do. I always say I think I do. You don't know. Nobody really knows. We just think we know sometimes. But I think they have the different ones, different types. We never could get a picture. You know, we rigged up camera traps several times. They would go around the trap like they saw it. How do you see a black thread 6-7 foot high in the night? Well, maybe they watched this. I don't know. I just don't know. Something else. They'll toy with you. They'll see how far they can go without pissing you off or something. They just they're different, and they are very intuitive, and they will see right through you, through your tricks. At least the ones I'm talking about, the ones I dealt with up there. Not all of them. Some of them you're just going to accidentally see, and if you're lucky to see one, good. But if they go out of your perception, that's only because you only see within certain frequencies. Like we only smell within certain frequencies. We don't smell like a dog or a bear. We don't have the olfactory sense for that. We don't have the eyesight to see all frequencies. And we are limited with our three-dimensional light frequency, and it's within certain parameters. And when they step out of that, you're not going to see them. So I say, well, just be simple. Don't try to, there's stages you can get into, like we're in the beta state right now of awareness. We're talking to each other in a cognizant way, I think. And you go from that into alpha when you just relax. You're not trying to figure out everything. You're not asleep, but you're relaxed. Go from that into theta state. And the theta state is where you have your lucid dreams, where you're not totally asleep, but you're kind of asleep. You know what I mean? And then after that, you go into deep sleep. And that's where Tesla got a lot of his answers to his problems, when he came out of a theta state into his awareness. But if you can get in that state of just being simple and don't try to just relax and have fun. They want us to be happy, and I think at least the ones I dealt with, there are some I think that can be aggressive, but maybe it's because people have been shooting at them. I don't know, but I say I think really the Earth is being screwed up by us, and I think they'd like for that to be changed. We shouldn't be killing people. We need to stop all that stuff. We're destroying the Earth and everything. And, don't go cutting up a bunch of trees around them. They don't like that for some reason. There's quite a bit to say about this. we're limited here with an hour, so I'm sure you.
Well, I think you also, maybe, I know you outlined some of this also in your books. If anyone wants to learn more about your experiences, what's the best place for them to learn more about this and read about your adventures?
Probably my book, Voices in the Wilderness, my chronicle, and it comes with a download of the sound. So when I talk about the sounds in the book, you can hear the actual sound. And that's on Amazon. It's called Voices in the Wilderness. And my website is ronmorehead.com, Morehead. And people can order these things through that. I also have the CDs. It's all this stuff is downloadable too, and less costly. And you can download it and read it on your iPad or whatever. And I've produced 2 CDs. One's narrated by Jonathan Frakes of Star Trek Next Generation, and it's Al Berry's story, and it's got the aggressive sounds in it. The second CD I have is Volume 2, and it's Bigfoot recordings, and I narrate that. And it's about the experience I had in '74 and more than that, but I got the sounds, so the wood knocking sounds, the rock clacking, the whooping sounds, and my interaction with them. That's in the second volume. And these are all downloadable. Voices in the Wilderness comes with sound bites too, and then you got the Quantum Bigfoot. These are available through my website, ronmorehead.com.
Let us know if you think Bigfoot could be more than a flesh and blood creature on Twitter and Instagram at strange_phenom and on Facebook at Strange Phenomenon, all one word. Please give us a review and subscribe on your favorite podcasting app. Visit www.strange-phenomenon.com for a full list of sources and more episodes. Strange Phenomenon is hosted by Ray Tarara. It's written and produced by RJ Blake and Ray Tarara. Theme music by Tara Monk. Additional music provided by Sergei Cheremizanov.